Okay, at the expense of being a little disruptive and maybe being a little melancholy about it, let me talk about something that is very heavily weighing on me. I want to warn you of something that the Bible talks about, and this one is critical. We are in a spiritual battle, folks. There is a war that has been waged from the very beginning of time that is happening in the invisible realm that very few people are aware of and very few people choose to even engage in. And if you're a Christian and you're not engaging in that war, you are bound to become the first casualty of it. It's tragic what's happened over the last several weeks. We just heard about voting and I'm like, I can't even believe it. Another national treasure gone. But it's wild to see people dedicating their time, their energy, and their effort to capitalize on this opportunity to talk about things like who really did it, their theory, their special investigations, when the real issue is happening in the spiritual realm. If there's anything that we should learn from the scriptures. We should learn from the fact that the Bible tells us that the battle that we fight, the real one, is not one that involves flesh and blood. Everybody knows that quintessential passage in Ephesians chapter 6. But here's one that's interesting that a lot of people don't ever think through, even when they read it. And that's in Colossians chapter 1, right around verses 15 through 17. It actually tells us that for everything that happens in the physical realm, there is something happening in the spiritual realm. I want to encourage you guys to do something. I want to encourage you guys to ask God to give you wisdom on how to see through the physical that is distracting and focus on the spiritual. We can spend a lot of time getting into the nonsense over the day-to-day stuff. But the thing that's happening in the spiritual is so much more consequential. And I think that God has given us this golden opportunity. Like, we've been given this remarkable chance right now, as I speak, to be a part of something that no other group in human history has been a part of. A spiritual awakening and a revival like nobody has ever seen. But that's going to require that those of us that are walking with the Lord turn on our spiritual caps, our thinking caps, and begin to look at things the way God intended for them to look. Can I give you just one example? This example is so important to me. Like, this one is just so critical. Because it goes back to the garden, and it goes back to the time that Satan literally was able to put into effect, through spiritual warfare, destroying all of mankind until God came in and saved mankind. But here's the thing. God tells Adam, after he creates Adam, he says, everything in the garden is yours. You can have it. It's all yours. You can freely eat of every tree, but of this particular tree, don't touch it. No, he didn't say don't touch it. Eve thought he said don't touch it. He said, do not eat of it, because the day you do, you're surely going to die. So what does Satan do? Satan gets Eve to focus on what she doesn't have. And the very moment she focused on what she did not have, meaning that tree, she forgot about everything that she did have, which was pretty much the whole known world. She had access to the whole known world. And she forsook that access because she was focused on the little tiny things she didn't have. And I don't want to sound disrespectful, but I want to make myself clear. Charlie was a dear, dear little brother to me. I know that there are lots of people that genuinely, legitimately loved him. But some of those people right now are spending so much time focusing on the fact that they don't have them. In their perception, he's gone. He's not on this earth. So they're focusing so much on what they don't have, which, by the way, we're Christians. We shouldn't focus on that. And I'll tell you why. Because Charlie is now in the ages. He is in the place that we hope to be. He's experiencing the effect of the abundance that God said he's made available to us. But the more you focus on, the more I focus on what I don't have, the more I begin to allow myself to not be engaged in the spiritual battle, thus becoming an actual casualty. Like literally, I lose every opportunity God has given me because I spend so much time focusing on what I don't have that now I've been ripped off of the opportunity that comes from the abundance that God has given me. Can you imagine, not that I want to ever speak for anybody or any situation, can you imagine if all Erica did was spend her time preoccupying herself with the loss of her husband, which, let me just make myself clear, if there's anybody that has a right to be preoccupied by that, it's her. But you know what she's not doing? She's not allowing the loss that she's experiencing right now to affect taking advantage of the incredible abundance that God has given her. And because of that, the world is going to be changed. And the devil absolutely hates her for it. Guys, it's time to stop it with all the things that focusing on what we don't have is causing us to do. It's time to stop it with the theories, with the lies, and all the other things. If you're a social media influencer, great. God's given you a tremendous thing. You have the whole garden at your fingertips. You have an audience that loves you and trusts you. Use what you have to do the thing instead of focusing on what you don't have so that you can lose your abundance. I'm saying this to everybody because we are a nation right now that is mourning, and we are a nation that is going through pain, and we are a nation that is going through suffering. But God says this to us. He says, for those of us that will put our faith and trust in him, that he will take every circumstance and he will work it together for the good. That was a verse that was Charlie's favorite verse. He loved that verse. That was one of his absolute favorite verses. He had a lot of favorite verses in Romans, by the way, because we talked about them all the time. Engage in the battle. Engage in the battle by focusing on what you do have. That way, God will take it and use it for something you never thought possible. There's one story in the Bible, last little quick thing. One story in the Bible of a woman who was married to a prophet who actually happened to work with one of the greatest prophets that ever lived. And this prophet died. And so these debtors came for what this prophet had owed them. And the widow that he left behind had nothing to her name. So she couldn't pay for it. So they basically said, I am going to come after your children and they're going to be my slaves because you can't pay this debt. So of course, what ends up happening is this woman in her desperation calls upon her husband's colleague, Elisha. And she says, I need help. I don't know what to do. The prophet goes to her and says, what do you have in the house? I don't have anything. I've lost my husband. I've got nothing to my name. The prophet says, what do you have in the house? She was busy focusing on what she didn't have. The prophet focused her on what she did. And she said, well, I got a little bit of oil right here. You know what the prophet does? The prophet says, go into the neighborhood and go borrow all these jars, these empty jars from people, and come back to the house. She does. She comes back to the house. She takes the little oil that she has. That's all she had was a little bit of oil. And she poured it into all of these other jars. And miraculously, those jars filled up. She was able to sell them, make a profit, save her sons, and be able to develop a tool by which she was able to make a living. Why? because somebody who loved God taught her to focus on what she did have instead of what she didn't have. And when she focused on what she did have, wonderful, great, amazing things were done. Just like Jesus needing to feed 50,000 people. Just because it says 5,000 men, it doesn't mean there were only 5,000 people there. 50,000 people. 50,000 people. And he did it by focusing on what they did have. And that was a little boy who had a few loaves and a few fishes. And he took it and he multiplied it. Brothers and sisters, it's time to engage in battle. It's time to engage in warfare. Focus on what we have been given. Focus on the tools that God has given us. Stop focusing on the loss. Stop focusing on the who did this and what happened here. I'm all about the truth. And I know that we are so blessed to have a God that is so good that he will bring the truth into fruition. And if we don't see it in our lifetime, guess what? On the throne, there's going to be a lot of judgment. In the meantime, let's fight. Let's fight in the spiritual realm. Let's get out there and do what God has called us to do. Everything depends upon it. Fight the good fight. Do not allow yourself to be distracted by the thing that the enemy wants to do. Engage and watch God do great things. I love you guys. Sorry I was a bit long-winded, but it had to be said. Fight the good fight.